Forest Dirk podcast, Justice for Dennis Schroeder. We are here tonight to talk Lakers Warriors. We had a Sixers Celtics-esque game two. It's 1-1. We are heading south, and yeah, it was a weird game, but series is alive and well. How are you?
I'm good. I wish I was as strong as the 16 consecutive game streak of home teams winning game two after dropping game one. But few things are in this world.
Yep. Uh, Anything stick out to you about tonight? Because it feels like we didn't get a chance to talk about game one on the pod, did we?
No, not really.
I mean that feels like the game that gave us the most information. I let's just start with who Darvin Ham is decided to roll with in game two, because I don't understand why D'Angelo Russell is playing more minutes than Dennis Schroeder. I just don't get it. I texted you during the game. Guarding D'Lo looks so fun. He's trying to stay in front of his own defender. It doesn't make sense to me, just because if you're from a Lakers perspective, if you're gonna win a title, make a run, win this series at the very least, like LeBron is gonna be a great point guard, and it will be the heliocentric playoff LeBron, even despite his age. Like that's the guy, or else the run isn't happening anyway. So
Yep.
I understand giving D'Lo a chance to find some confidence, because yeah, he's a really talented scorer, and he always has been. And he tricked me at Ohio State. I thought he was gonna be a true stud. And so yeah, I just think Dennis Schroeder fills their needs. He can pressure the ball. He can chase their shooters, and he has a moxie about him in the playoffs. And his defense has been inconsistent throughout his career, but when he's locked in, which he has been for the Lakers recently, I think that he needs to be playing 30 minutes for them.
Yeah, I like the way they look with Schroeder more for sure. He was the only Laker, I believe, that had a free throw attempt in the first half of this game after they took 29 free throws, I believe, in game one. Um, Whenever the Lakers are going into a game, Anthony Davis and LeBron combining for zero first half free throw attempts is never a winning formula. And AD had today one of his classic follow up, really good performance with a performance that makes people wonder on Twitter, is this AD's worst playoff game ever?
Yeah.
And I feel like there have been maybe three or four of these playoffs where you wonder if it's his worst playoff game ever. Um, he made some impact on defense, nothing close to what he was in game one. And I think some of it was Draymond defended him better than Looney did in game one. But I think another part of it was just it was one of those games where it seemed like both he and LeBron were gonna see, is the jumper going tonight? Because I'd love to win that way. And it was for LeBron, at least in the first half. For AD, it was not, and he didn't really seem to want to put in the effort to try to get things going around the basket.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of, I think you could look at it from glass half full or glass half empty, depending on your perspective for these first two games.
Yeah. Do you want to go rose colored glasses? You
Oh,
you
I'd love to.
you said before the pod, Max wants to uh crack open an old segment, rose colored glasses, where we're just gonna think positively. Because as proud as I was of our last episode, I listened back and I'm like, God, I am such a media dick. I just like I talk shit about Tim Bontemps, and then I come on and say all the things I don't like about all these amazing players. So let's go rose color for a moment.
Yeah. So rose colored glasses, this is, I've noticed after playoff losses, it's very easy for the team that lost or won, honestly, to say, well, we did all this stuff and still won. Or, they did all this stuff and we lost, but that's not going to happen again. So, starting with the Warriors fan rose colored glasses, we've got the best player in the series, Steph Curry. We've been smoking hot from three, and they're giving us all the threes we want, trying to take them away. We've got They've got LeBron, who's old. He's past his prime. He's not going to the rim like he used to anymore. Sure, they got us in game one. That was 48 hours after the end of a really hard fought series against the Kings. We had to adjust to them. We got them in game two, totally kicked their ass. We're going to go down to LA, steal one there, close this out in six. And the Lakers just don't have the legs to stay with us in our pace in this series.
Yeah, it's the great thing about a 1-1 series like this is rose-colored glasses are pretty fun, easy to do for both sides. Lakers, you rested your best guys. We did our job. We got one in at Oracle, and yeah, and a lot of work ahead, but they're going back to LA exactly where they want to be. I still am worried. I'm worried about Darvin Ham's choice of guys, because Rui had 21 tonight and he was making shots, and you got to ride a couple of these role guys and extend your rotation when whoever's hitting shots on any given night. Um, but I also would love to see the Lakers hone in on who I really think are their best five guys together. And that for me unequivocally is AD, LeBron, Vando, Reeves, and Schroeder. And I know, part of the Lakers have a size advantage in this series, especially if Kayvon Looney's not himself. But it's just an illness, so I assume Looney will be 100% at some point again in this series. But even with Looney, though, we saw what AD was capable of against full Looney in game one. I don't know though if the Lakers should lean into the size advantage. They might be the better team. I Rui has some of that like empty calorie offense to his game. And look, he made 4 threes tonight. Like he was important. I just don't
Mm.
think he's giving you a lot besides the shooting, but the shooting is really important.
Yeah, I kind of disagree. I think I've been pretty impressed with Rui throughout these playoffs. He had a few big performances in that Memphis series, especially in that game one, but he carried it through for a lot of that series.
Yeah.
Game one in this series, he was efficient, but they didn't play him very much. And then tonight he came in and hit some shots. He was honestly keeping them in it in the second quarter when a lot of the team looked pretty disinterested. Um, so I I might look to play him a little bit more. If you play him, LeBron and AD, that is a pretty imposing front line inside, and the Warriors just kind of don't have the big bodies to throw at those guys.
Yeah.
Like if they're putting, if they want to put Wiggins on LeBron and Draymond on AD, that means Rui can kind of batter and bruise a much smaller defender, whether that's Clay or if they try to hide Poole on him or whoever it may be. So I think it's worth giving him some more of a look. Vando, I agree. I mean, his defense in game one on Steph was awesome. The way he was chasing him around screens. Tonight, it just seemed like the Lakers didn't come out with the requisite intensity and effort to kind of replicate that strategy from game one, because that's a defensive strategy that requires a lot of effort and mental focus, which they didn't seem to have tonight. And but at the same time, Vando's presence does gum up their offense. And this whole series, I think, is going to be kind of from the Lakers side, Darvin Ham doing a bit of a push and pull on how well if Vanderbilt can knock down like 2 threes in a game, that opens everything up. But if he's not, then he's kind of going between him and D'Lo for more offense or more defense and
Yeah.
playmaking. Because when LeBron is trying to post up with Davis and Vanderbilt in the game, he's looking at a very crowded paint. It was a similar issue to what they faced in the Memphis series when uh, it's not quite Tillman and Jaren Jackson being in the middle, but still, Draymond and some of the other Warriors defenders, it just makes things more difficult for him. Um, but yeah, I mean, as I said at the top, now 16 straight games where if the home team loses game one, they've come back and won game two. A lot of those were in blowout fashion. And I was thinking back through the games so far this playoffs where that's been the case. Home team drops game one, wins game two, and which game has been more indicative of the way the series has gone. And in all cases, this playoff so far, game one has been more indicative of where the series has gone than game two. Like in the Knicks Cavs series, Knicks won kind of a nail biter in game one, and then the Cavs absolutely smacked them in game two. And the Knicks went on to really establish themselves physically the rest of that series like they did in game one. Um, Memphis Lakers won game one, and they kind of, went on to, they didn't quite cruise to a win, but it was a fairly comfortable 6 game win. Um, the one that the one that wasn't quite as much was Suns Clippers, but Kawhi got hurt, so we'll never really know how that series would have gone had he not, because I think it would have been a much more competitive series with a healthy Kawhi. Um, and then Milwaukee against Miami, that game one ended up being much more indicative than the game two, where they just blitzed them with, I think an 80-point half. So yeah, I mean, game three will be. I expect the atmosphere in LA to be crazy. The Warriors. I'm still not convinced they're over their sort of road struggles from this year. That first
What?
round series with that first round series with Sacramento, like how much of a road game is that? I know the environment in Sacramento is crazy, but they're not like traveling that far. I guess it's not like LA's that far either, but
But I don't know, dude. They stayed alive. They won the game that they put themselves in a hole and they won in Sacramento. I wasn't there. I didn't get a great sense of it via TV screen, that crowd, but that's about as big a road win as there's been so far this season. So I don't know. I don't buy that the Warriors are road strugglers at this point. I have too much faith in their culture. But I think like the Lakers should be looking to goad the Warriors into more of these small lineups because that's where you get Gary Payton, that's where you get Jordan Poole. I feel like that's where the Warriors have been at a disadvantage. It's when the Warriors are able to play Wiggins, Draymond, Looney all at the same time that it feels like they're actually really physical and bigger than the heights on their roster would suggest. So
was was Peyton hurt today? Did he even play?
he played 8 minutes.
Okay.
I think it was just like the game didn't need him, and
Yeah.
he went in at the end of the third, and they threw a Hail Mary to LeBron that just went right out of bounds, and Gary Payton went straight out, and the crowd went crazy for him because it was kind of funny. Like he was in for half a possession, and then
Yeah.
that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. The Lakers took their guys out, and so yeah, Gary probably would have double-digit minutes, but still a quieter game from him.
Yeah. I mean, what was so interesting about game one is both teams were kind of dealing with the same issue where they were dealing with these clogged paints because when the Lakers had the ball, the Warriors kept Looney and Draymond in the paint because they didn't pay any mind to Vanderbilt or Davis as shooters. And then when the Warriors had the ball, the Lakers just completely ignored Looney and Draymond. And one of my notes from game one is I think this is a series where I don't think the Warriors are going to be able to play Looney and Draymond together
Yeah.
for long stretches of time. Um, just because the Lakers have so much size in their front court that they can really just completely take away the paint as an option when Looney and Draymond are in the game together because they're just not going to guard those guys. And if they want to, they're going to try to chase Curry, Clay, and Poole into mid-range shots and floaters. And if they win off of those, then so be it. That was kind of their strategy in game one. So I was not surprised to see. Well, I guess it's hard to tell whether the Looney coming off the bench was because he was sick or if Kerr was kind of going to do that anyways. It seemed like it was kind of a good excuse to do something that he might have been thinking about doing anyways, with
Yeah.
just getting a little bit more shooting on the floor. Um, so yeah, I'll be curious to see, and I've seen a few games that the Lakers have played against the Warriors this year. Because they right after the trade deadline, they played them a few times in a row, and neither LeBron nor Curry played in those games. But Davis and Draymond did match up against each other, and Draymond held Davis in check for most of those games, and it was a little hard to tell whether it was just kind of Davis kind of floating around or if Draymond was actually kind of defending him well. I know in previous playoff clashes between the two, when Davis was in New Orleans, he had put up some pretty dominant performances. But I mean, he can in game one, he was the best player on the floor, and he can be the best player in this series. In the rose-colored glasses bit, I was sort of speaking as a Warriors fan, saying that Curry's the best player in the series, and he probably is the best player in the series. But Davis certainly is capable of rising to that level. Um, but all year, all playoffs long, well, maybe not all year, but all playoffs long and down the stretch of the season, whenever the Lakers get into a position where they kind of have a leg up, they always let up. Like in the play-in game against Minnesota, where they were down two starters and everyone thought the Lakers would just roll them. They came out and it was like really hard fought and they barely scraped it out. And then Memphis, the game where they didn't have John Morant and the Lakers were up 1-0, they, kind of let up and Memphis rolled them in that game. Um,
Yeah.
so they definitely have a way of doing that.
I think if I were a Warriors fan, I'd want to throw in the towel on having four shooters on the floor for extended periods of time, just because that isn't the way that it's one of the paradoxes of this dynasty is like outside of the couple best shooters of all time. It's sometimes hard for them to scrape together other floor spacers because Draymond needs to play at all times in the playoffs, the genius that he is. And so I think like one, I want DiVincenzo playing 35 minutes a night in this series. I think DiVincenzo he shoots with confidence, but shooting isn't his bread and butter. He has some Josh Hart qualities to him. He's a great rebounder. He's a feisty defender. He doesn't have all the physical gifts on defense, but he's just like so cerebral. And yeah, I would like them to move away from Poole and really lock in on that six, which is you know the Splash Brothers, Wiggins, Looney, Draymond, and DiVincenzo. If I were a Warriors fan, that those would be the six guys that I'd be riding and dying with down the stretch in this series.
Yeah, I never would have thought at the beginning of the year with the way the Lakers year started that when the playoffs rolled around, they might have more rotation pieces that I
Yeah,
trusted than the Warriors would. Um, but I do think they have more options than the Warriors do. I thought coming out of game one that if I were a Warriors fan, I would be a bit concerned that they made 40% of their 53s, had a pretty low turnover game by their standards. The rebounding battle was pretty much a draw,
yeah,
and they still lost. And they had like a big run at the end to kind of make it a close game. Um, but then, they came right back in game two and hit 23s again. They hit 23s in both games one
yeah.
and two, which, I mean, usually when you hit 23s, you're going to win the game. Um, so,
Yeah, and
yeah.
To Darvin's credit, like sometimes you do have to put these streaky offensive role players on the floor so that you don't lose them because guys need minutes to find their confidence shooting. And there was a time when Nasir Little was a fun young piece for the Blazers, and I think that he was a little bit defensively clueless for a few weeks early this season. He was battling injuries, and Chauncey benched him, and suddenly the shooting went with it. And sometimes I'm hard on these coaches for playing guys like Poole, like Rui, like D'Lo, these streaky offensive role players. But I understand the argument for continuing to give Poole minutes because you can't let his confidence evaporate. You're going to need him to make shots.
Going forward for game three, I mean, wow, Davis and LeBron combined for one free throw tonight.
Yeah, zero
Which
free throws for LeBron.
yeah, LeBron had, I mean, an encouraging thing for LeBron is that he kind of rediscovered his jumper in this game because he'd been
Yeah,
going through a very prolonged shooting slump. Um, but he also seemed like he was determined to see if he could score 30 without touching the restricted area. And clearly, I think LeBron was under 30 minutes. AD was around 33 minutes. They played them both pretty heavy minutes in game one. So I think once they saw the game was spiraling out of reach, probably going into the game, they thought, if we can keep these guys' minutes down, especially because this one thing that does lean the Warriors' way, I think, is the schedule of this series where it's going to be every game is every other day, even when they travel back and forth between sites. Like it's only one day off before in LA and then every other day from there on out. So I think that leans the Warriors' way a little bit more, just with LeBron dealing
yeah,
with this foot injury. It seems like, I mean, no doubt he doesn't have the same explosiveness that he had when he was younger, and even that he had earlier this season when he's been dealing with this foot injury. Seems like he really has to summon a lot of strength in those moments when he wants to go to the basket. And I think, I mean, the Warriors did just come off a long series, but Steph is incredibly well conditioned, even though he's in his mid 30s, and they have some slightly younger legs, at least than AD and LeBron. Well, AD isn't that old, but he sort of seems old. Um,
yeah.
yeah, and AD is he's going to have probably another game like that game one where he looks like the best player on the court, and then he might have another game like tonight where he looks like kind of disinterested, and then it's what happens in those other few games that might decide the series.
Yeah. Side note, like Jared Vanderbilt would be such a valuable piece. I mean, he's already a really good player, but if he could just figure out how to get to upper 30s, wide open threes. He shot two tonight. He made one. He was like 32% this year. And obviously, the Warriors are fine with Jared Vanderbilt threes right now. But the one he made tonight, I was like, his shot doesn't look so bad. Like, AD is at this point is not a 3-point shooter. We just have to accept that. He no longer even tries them, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
And LeBron was like 18% from three coming into this game on like 50 attempts throughout the playoffs. So yeah, shooting is even more of an issue for the Lakers from three than it is for the Warriors among their ancillary guys.
Yeah. Seems like we should probably mention Klay Thompson. He had an awesome game too. I believe he's now the record holder for most playoff games with 8+ threes. I think I saw that in the post game. Um, and he sort of just had that look from the beginning where his shots weren't coming close to touching the rim.
Yeah.
Um, and when he's going like that for the Warriors, they're really tough to beat because Curry's pretty much always going to be at the same level. Klay, since his injuries, his numbers average out to about what his career numbers were, but it tends to fluctuate a lot more between the hots and the colds.
Yeah.
Um, so, and he might be very motivated playing down in LA too, as a Southern California guy, and his dad played for the Lakers. I could see him having a big game down there. I was joking with my brother that AD got to LeBron a little bit too late in LeBron's career because he seems to have picked up on a lot of the like pacing habits that LeBron has, where he really kind of feels out playoff series and
Yeah.
and in his later career kind of tries to really conserve his energy until he absolutely needs to use it. And AD does that on sort of a more macro level, like game to game, in a way that LeBron does now as well. But yeah, I think I sort of expect game three because I think they're going to get a big boost from their home crowd.
Yeah.
And I mean, typically in these playoffs, AD has responded very well after one of these poor games. We have a few examples of it now. So I expect them to get that. I expect the Warriors probably to not make 23s again like they did the first two games in the crypt.
Mm-hmm.
And assuming if the Lakers do win game three, I mean, honestly, regardless, game four is going to be an absolute bloodbath because it'll be the difference between probably a short series and a long one. And
Yeah.
I expect this one to be long. And yeah, I tend to agree with you that the longer the series goes, the more I favor the Warriors just because I can see LeBron and AD breaking down a little bit more. And I trust Steph and some of the Warriors' younger legs to maintain as that with home court. That helps as well.
Yeah. I think at the beginning of this game, Draymond had a couple just clear path to the rim drives. Like the Lakers did okay, we're just going to go full Matador because we want to make Draymond a scorer. And I think they should be careful with that because obviously it makes sense. Like Draymond taking shots is something you like when you play the Warriors, but they had such a psychological edge in game one, just like nothing at the rim was going. AD was a complete vacuum, and I think that it does something to the makeup of the Warriors when Draymond is an absolute zero as a scorer. And if you let him just get some confidence to, run the play action, take the ball to himself to the basket, I think it makes things a little bit more loose and fun for the Warriors. And I think like the Lakers and AD should take pride in keeping Draymond to single digit points. I don't know. There was a softness. I was like, I get the strategy. Like completely sag off of Draymond. He's uncomfortable finishing at the rim. His package is very limited. But you can't give open layups to a guy. I think it just sets a poor tone for the night.
Yeah. I mean, you want Draymond shooting, but you don't want him getting uncontested dunks.
Yeah, yeah,
And end of the second quarter, there was a play where Draymond got it rolling down the lane, and D'Angelo Russell was on one block, and LeBron was on the other block, and neither of them took a step, and they both just watched as Draymond ran down the middle of the paint for a dunk. Um, with the adjustment of keeping Looney on the bench, um, I wasn't sure whether the Lakers would put Davis on Draymond after the Warriors made that switch because when you put him on Draymond, it means he's going to be involved in all the screening actions.
Yeah.
And that led to all of these like 4-on-3s or honestly 1-on-0s where Draymond would catch the ball on the roll and just have a completely uncontested path to the lane. So, assuming the Warriors roll with that small lineup again, if I were Darvin Ham, I would probably not have Davis on Draymond. I might put him on whoever their weakest shooter is. So like JaMychal Green, or if they decide not to go with JaMychal and instead go with Looney again. Well, if they go with Looney again, that makes things easy. But if they go with Kaminga, I'd put him on Kaminga. If they go with honestly anybody who's not, I wouldn't put him
Put
on
him on
Draymond.
Gary Payton.
Put him on Gary Payton, or even if it's Moody. Like Moody's a good
Yeah.
shooter, but I'd still you want to keep AD as close to the basket as possible and just going to try to kind of zone up on those other areas because when he's guarding Draymond, it's too easy to bring him away from the basket. And then once he's away from the basket, the Lakers defense is kind of hamstrung because LeBron, he can summon the energy for blocks every now and then, but in general, he's not the sort of secondary rim protector that he used to be. And their second longest guy, Vanderbilt, is out chasing Steph around. So that just leaves D'Angelo Russell and Austin Reeves to try to clean up messes on the backside, which just isn't going to happen.
Yeah.
So whatever they can do to keep AD as close to the basket as possible, I think should be their plan for going forward in the series.
Yeah. The Lakers have to try to muck this series back up and bring everything inside, clog the lanes. I think lean into your defensive ceiling that I think is this team's strength right now. And if you're the Warriors, play the math game, shoot a bunch of threes. I think if this becomes a 3-point shooting fest, like the Warriors have an advantage. And it's been a fun clash of styles. Game 2 was lame, but this Lakers LA stand is going to be pretty damn fun.
Absolutely.
All right.
So
Talk to you soon. Peace.
I do like being right. Ask my ex-husband.
Happens every time. X. There's a reason it's X, huh?